Hey everybody, I'm so excited to be here today. And before I kind of talk a little bit more about my journey and some of the good, bad, and ugly, I wanted to quickly ask a couple of questions so that I know where to calibrate. So how many people in the audience are currently working on a startup or an idea that's in the early phases of a startup? Maybe half. How many people have pitched an investor or thought about going out for fundraising? Okay. 40%. And how many people have been told that your idea is crazy, bad, or awful? Okay, good. So one of the things I think is so interesting about starting a business, yeah, me too, over 100 times. One of the things that's so interesting to me is that almost all great companies at some point in time get told that their idea is crazy. Airbnb got it, Uber got it, and yet most businesses that are unsuccessful also get told that their idea is crazy, or awful, or bad. And so I think one of the challenges for being an entrepreneur is how you tell the difference. When you have an early nascent idea that is clumsy, that is not fully expressed, how do you know when people are telling you that it's wrong, that they're not going to back you? How do you know whether it's you or them? And that's the issue that I want to explore a little bit today. So when I started the Muse, this is an early screenshot of us back from 2011, early 2012, and it was really clumsy. My co-founders and I had a big, beautiful vision for how we were going to change the way that people navigated their careers, help people find jobs in a really personalized, engaged fashion. But our first site was a modified WordPress template with a custom Python career and job search platform bolted on. It was kind of like startup Frankenstein. It wasn't sleek, it wasn't pretty, and it barely did the job. And when I think back to these kind of early days, this is us in our office/living room in spring of 2012. That's actually my bedroom. You can see in the bright light. This is the team, me with bangs there, sitting and kind of cranking away. And my co-founder and her now husband lived in the bedroom in the back, sort of right behind the picture taker. And if you wanted to take a shower, there was only one bathroom. You had to walk through the middle of the living room/office to do it. So we were really, really scrappy. It was early days. We had 3 employees, all of them being paid below market rate. And my co-founder and I hadn't started taking a salary yet. And I knew in order to grow, we'd have to go out there and raise funding. And so we put together a basic pitch, what we were doing, what's the future of the business, where we're going, our traction so far. And I started setting up meetings. New York, Silicon Valley, San Francisco, Chicago. And as I went out, I started to run into the cold, hard reality of fundraising, which is that a lot of people don't see the same vision that you do. Some of the people that we spoke with were really smart, were really reasonable. They just saw something about a business as being too challenging. So a lot of people said, it's a scale question. You guys are trying to create photo and video to take people inside companies. That's hard, that's expensive, it's never gonna work. Some people didn't like us because of the market we were in. A lot of people said, look, LinkedIn has already won. One guy who had not looked for a job in about 20 years pulled up monster.com and said, I don't see what's wrong with this. We also got questions that were maybe a bit more sort of unrelated. One guy said, great, you have 250,000 monthly active users, but Vidi has millions, so what? Vidi is a completely and totally unrelated business to ours that no longer exists. But I think that the point is that people will come up with all sorts of reasons, some very reasonable and some not so much, for why they're not going to back you. The last that I want to share, and I'm saying this so that you kind of get the mindset that I was in when we were doing these early fundraising conversations, is that some people also said some pretty horrible and sexist things to us related to the fact that a lot of our early audience was women. So 2 of my favorites are, aren't all of your female users going to quit using the Muse once they turn 30? And do you think people, women outside of major cities, actually care? And I wanted to say, don't you know any women? I mean, are you kidding me? But the reason I'm sharing these is because when you're pitching, I was pitching sometimes 9 a.m., 10:30 a.m., over lunch, 2 p.m., 4 p.m., and once again over drinks, getting rejected over and over again, about 148 times. You can get in this really tough mindset where it feels like nothing is going to go right and you'll grasp at any shred of hope. And that's where I was when I went into a really fateful meeting for us, for the Muse, in the spring of 2012. I had gotten to kind of what felt like the end of my rope. And what's interesting after getting rejected all of those times is I actually didn't necessarily lose a lot of my faith in the business. I still felt like what we were doing needed to exist and that there was a very clear reason for it, but I was losing a lot of faith in myself. I felt like if I know this needs to exist and yet no one will back me, maybe it's me. Maybe I'm not enough or smart enough or communicating it well enough to be able to convince these people to back us. And I really started to have doubts. And so I finally scheduled a meeting with a fund that seemed pretty interested over email. And they invited me, spring of 2012, down to their big fancy Silicon Valley offices. These are not the actual VCs, but this is pretty much what every office in Silicon Valley looks like. Khakis, often sweater vests, polished conference room tables. And I went in, and my hands were shaking. I was incredibly nervous, but I took a deep breath and remembered, all right, this is why I'm here. And at the beginning, it started to go so well. I was explaining why the Muse existed, how we had grown from 20,000 to 100,000 to 250,000 monthly active unique visitors with no advertising spend. They seemed really excited. They were leaning in. I was then walking them through why is it that we use photo and video to tell the story about companies to better connect them with applicants, and they were nodding along. And as we got further and further into the pitch, my heart started beating, and I kept thinking, this is it. This is what it feels like when somebody is going to say yes. Until right at the end, when they started asking questions. And one of their first questions led them to our career advice. Now, we source expert career contributions from a massive network of expert contributors on everything from job search, management, productivity, negotiation. And as I started answering their question and talking through this, their eyes dropped, and they leaned back, and they started nodding, and they said, no, 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 you use content? I was like, yeah, we use content here. And they're like, no, no, no. Content is bad. Content is not a good business model. Content is expensive. And as they started talking amongst themselves and lecturing me on why content was a bad choice, one of them leaned forward and said, look, I like you. I like what you're doing. I think that there's a lot of interesting stuff here. But I'm going to level with you. It's too much. If you want to do content, just do content. Make a magazine. That's a great lifestyle business. And if you want to be a big business, just be a job board. If you're going to do jobs, just do that. I will write you a check right now if you kill the content. I wish I could say that I sat there and I grappled with the decision and everything sort of closed in, but instead, before my brain had even registered the end of the sentence, my gut was kicking in and my mouth was saying, no. No, I don't think you understand. Thank you. I don't think you understand why this makes us different, why this gives us access to people who aren't going to come to just another job board. And even though the rest of the conversation went fine, it felt like that word, content, had poisoned the well. And as I walked back out of that meeting into the daylight with a very vague, oh, thanks so much, we'll call you, I remember thinking, is this it? Is this going to be the rest of the Muse's life? My quest to find someone who won't tell me to cut off one of the most important things about what we do in order to try and get funding. And as I was driving back up to San Francisco, where my team was, I thought about two things. One was, how am I going to tell them that another person just said no, that it's another few months before we can raise salaries, hire new people, buy anything that we need? And the second thing was, how am I sure that I'm actually not the crazy one? And that's a tough question. There are two things that I've been thinking through since then that I find is a really helpful litmus test when one group of people is saying no, and you're kind of going in that same direction anyway. The first thing is to look at who's giving you that feedback. So at the same time that we were getting a lot of disinterest and apathy from a lot of investors, I was going home every night and opening up my inbox and getting emails from users who were saying, this product changed my life. People who were writing in and saying, I was stuck in a rut, I was unemployed, I had a bad job, I had this, I had that, for months and months and months, and I found the Muse. And now I'm in a job that I love. I've changed these things. I got the raise, I got the promotion. Thank you, I wish I discovered you sooner. And as I started to pay attention to what was happening, one of the most interesting things for me was seeing that the people who loved our product were all in about the same sort of demographic. They were 22 to 35 years old, slightly more likely than average to be women, slightly more likely than average to be diverse, and generally they were a bit unsure about where they were in their career, even if they had some sense maybe of where they wanted to go long term. And then I looked at the people that were most likely to write us off or say that there's no need. And by and large, they were all people who had gone to sort of top business schools. Many of them had gone directly into careers in finance, often 35 to 55 years old, very well-built networks, very comfortable. There's nothing wrong with that, but that is not our user. And in the conflict between the experts and the powerful people and the people that actually use our product, we chose to trust the users. The second thing that really helped get through that time was something that it's a philosophy called first principles. Some of you may have heard of it. Elon Musk has popularized it recently, but it actually goes back to Aristotle. And the idea is breaking down a problem into its absolutely most basic fundamental components. So instead of saying, well, this is a certain way because it's always been done, you break everything down into the lowest possible piece or denominator and say, why is it that this is that way? Do I believe this to be true? And to take an idea that's very complicated and make it very simple, one of those pieces for me was, do I think that there is an opportunity here? Is there a market? Part of that for me started with looking at the existing current products. This is a marketing manager search from LinkedIn, Indeed, and Monster.com, 3 of the leading job searching career platforms. And I thought, is this enough? Are there people that need more than this? Are there a lot of people? And if you believe that there's an opportunity, you often get to the second question, sometimes the harder question, which is, am I enough? Am I the one that can build this? What I think, though, that's so powerful about tackling an opportunity that a lot of the powers that be tell you doesn't exist, isn't worth bothering with, is that you are the one who sees it. And if you can learn fast enough, be enough just for where you are now, if you get the right team, the right idea, the right timing, you can become just enough of what you need to be, fast enough to do something that no one else is bothering with. So a couple of months after that conversation, in spring 2012, we were finally able to raise our seed round. We raised $1.2 million, mostly in check sizes of $25,000 to $50,000, which means a lot of small investors. 2 years after that, we raised a $10 million Series A that was oversubscribed, and now over 50 million people use the Muse every single year to get a new job, move forward in their career, and tackle some sort of career question or problem that they have. We also work with a lot of the biggest companies in the United States, and now we're starting to go international. And what's so interesting is we make millions of dollars a year off of recruiting, matching companies and candidates, and one of the things that the companies love most is the fact that we have a lot of people using the Muse who aren't there to find a job. In fact, they're what's called passive candidates in the industry, but in layman's terms, it essentially means they might be open to the right opportunity if it comes along, but they're not looking, they're not trolling job boards. If they're not trolling job boards, why do they come to the Muse? It turns out it's for the content. It's for the fact that we offer advice and resources and things that you need when you might be looking for a job in a few months, but you don't need it now. Our biggest fundraising liability has turned into one of our biggest strengths as a business. And on top of that, when you then look at some of the other concerns we got, for example, the fact that we send photo and video crews into all of the companies we work with to tell a story about what it's like to work there, it turns out companies really love that too. It's one of our leading selling points. And now that we have freelancers operating in 20 cities around the globe, again, it's now the asset that makes us operationally different from most of our competitors, instead of that thing that I tried to hide from investors because I knew as soon as I came up, they'd say, sorry, not for me. So what does this mean for you? I think at its core, wherever you are right now in your startup journey, whether you're at the very beginning or whether you're much further down the path, you have encountered and you are going to encounter over and over again people who tell you, that doesn't make sense, that's wrong. All good startups do it like X. Everyone who succeeds does Y. I've seen this movie before. It doesn't end well for you. You should change. And sometimes that's good feedback. Sometimes you need to incorporate it and pivot or twist or do something differently. But in many cases, you will know. Sometimes it's because it's in conflict with what your users are telling you. Sometimes because if you reason down to the very core essence of what you're doing, according to first principles, you just don't believe that they're right. And you have to say, I'm sorry, I don't agree. I don't agree to sacrifice something about our company's vision because you believe it to be so, or it's the only way you're going to give me a check. I don't agree to listen to someone's investment thesis or everyone's idea of what's hot in the market right now over what I believe our users are saying is true at the core of what they need. And when you can kind of look that fear in the face and accept that you still might be wrong, you still might be crazy, but you're going to do it anyway, I think that's when a lot of the magic happens. Ultimately, everyone who is seeing a future that doesn't exist today is going to be called crazy at some point. And I think the question is, can you continue moving forward anyway? And can you base yourself on enough of what you know to be true that you have a chance to build something that's beautiful? That's all for me today. Thank you so much.